Good morning. My name is Ken Cutlick. I'm from Our Redeemer in Augusta, Georgia. And this morning we're going to tell you a little bit about our mission trip to Belize back in July. This is not the first time we've been to Belize. Back in 2016, we started going to Belize. We made 4 trips and then had a break for COVID. And this is the first time we've gone back since COVID. So we can just review. He got his workout. Okay, go ahead. Next slide. Okay. And we had quite a few suitcases. We had, of course, each one of us had a personal suitcase, plus we had several team suitcases. We typically take down our craft items, items for VBS. So we had 3 extra large suitcases, and I'm not sure Kansas City had 1 or 2 also, that group from Kansas City. So we loaded those vans down. Okay. This is just, we had 2 vans. One of the people from the mission team drove one of the vans, and we were responsible for driving the other van. Go ahead. And pretty soon, after a couple hours drive, we got to Signbite, and that's that town way on the peninsula. It's was about a 2.5-hour drive. Okay. In Signbite, this is the base for the Belize Mission Society. Belize Mission Society is a group that's been working in Belize for about 20 years, and they're really an LCMS partner. They're not in the organizational structure of LCMS, but they're designated as an LCMS partner. They work closely with Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And they've, over the years, have acquired some property and built a church. Go ahead, next slide. And the church is right next to the local government-run school in Belize, so that's kind of a strategic location. Go ahead. Okay. They've also got another building that they call Mercy House. It's kind of a multi-use building that's recently been completed. Go ahead. Now the church, there are 2 full-time LCMS missionary pastors in Belize. They're not they're not headquartered in Signbite. They're headquartered in Belmopan, the capital of Belize. But they come down to Signbite and conduct worship services, but only every other Sunday. I just recently found out the LCMS has a goal of opening a church or establishing a congregation in each of the 6 districts in Belize. And there are now, I believe, I read four churches that have been established and are meeting. Some of them are meeting in borrowed space, and a couple of them are meeting in space that they own. So Mercy House is as I said, a multi-use facility. And we got a tour when we got there, kind of a reception area. And they've equipped it with 2 dental chairs, and they have teams come down during the year, dental teams, and provide service to the patients down there. And they also, it's equipped as a clinic. There are medical teams that will come down, and so they have room set up just for medical examination and treatment. Okay. And again, that's right next to the school, kind of a strategic location. The Belize Mission Society, in addition to the church, they do a feeding program for the children at the school. I can't say enough and can't emphasize enough how impoverished the people are down there. It's a lot of the kids don't have access to good nutrition. So twice a day, during the school year, twice a day the kids are fed. Now, not every child gets fed. They have to sign up and be approved with the program. It's based on their need, which is quite needy. I think I've heard that there were 70 or 80 kids that were signed up in the feeding program. Right. Dean's saying that's the elementary school, so that's where they get a lot of the kids, and a lot of the interest comes from that. with that. Mike, I think Mike and Logan and Dean, somebody's going to talk about one of the things we did is a feeding program in Georgetown, which is the other location, which we're going to talk about. You have to get pretty close to that mic.
Well, there's only about 3 or 4 slides here, but there's another part later on. But when we got down there, we were going to have VBS on Monday through Thursday. So Sunday, we went over, and you can see, I guess, we made sandwiches for the kids. We had to make them the day before. So what ended up happening is on Sunday and on Tuesday, we made peanut butter sandwiches. And we had to take all the peanut butter down there because it's more expensive to buy it. So we packed it in our bags and took it down. So that's us making peanut butter sandwiches on Sunday night and on Tuesday. On Monday and Wednesday, we had a treat for the kids. We let them have cheese sandwiches. So we put one slice of cheese between 2 pieces of bread. And you can see what we were trying to do here at this particular point is we were trying to make the sandwiches and then we put them in a cooler and we took them back with us to the hotel. And then the next day, when we actually went to VBS, that's when we would actually put the meals together. While the kids were doing VBS, we would actually put the meals together and get them ready to serve us. And so those 3 or 4 slides were based on that, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about the feeding program when we get a little bit farther down the road.
Okay, once we got the sandwiches made on Sunday afternoon, we were off to Georgetown. Again, that's about a 45-minute drive, something we had to do twice a day there and back. And this is, it's a beautiful drive, really. We were right along the ocean. If you can replay that, Rick? Yeah, there you go. So it's right along that ocean drive, right along that peninsula, and then inland. We were in an area that was a little more hilly, right kind of at the base of the Mayan mountains. And it's kind of the rainforest area. Once we got past the mountains, the road to Georgetown was about a mile of gravel road. And when we got there, it had been raining and for several days, and things were pretty wet. Now, we were supposed to have VBS outside, and we quickly realized that because of the water standing everywhere, that wasn't going to be a great option. Luckily, we were right next to a school. This is the school for Georgetown, and we were able to use that school for VBS, but we'll get to that in a minute. The first thing is we did Sunday afternoon was a prayer walk. And as soon as we got out of the van, these three young men approached us and offered to be our guides to the village in Georgetown and show us around. And anybody want to have any words about the prayer walk? Or you want me to keep going? Keep going? Okay. So we split up into teams in Georgetown, and this will give you some visuals of the actual area that we were in and the housing conditions also. The houses are further apart compared to later pictures you'll see of houses in Signbite that are right on top of each other. And we took about an hour and walked through the different streets. The village of Georgetown is basically along one main street for about a half a mile, and then a couple parallel streets on either side. I couldn't find a population on the internet of Georgetown, but I don't think it's more than about 500. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but there just wasn't a whole lot to Georgetown. Okay. After we got done at Georgetown with our prayer walk, we were actually going to stay in a place called Roberts Grove, which is just a mile or so from Signbright. So this is the first time we saw our accommodations in Roberts Grove. We had much better accommodations this year. We were in 2-bedroom, 2-bath condos. They were nice. They were very comfortable. And we used those condos. We had breakfast and dinner in the condos that was brought into us. They had arranged for ladies in the village to cook breakfast for us, and they had a caterer type person that would cook lunch, an individual, dinner, cook dinner for us each night. Next slide. But we also used the living area of the condos for VBS prep. In this slide, we're unpacking some of the supplies and getting things ready and going over the lessons. The VBS curriculum, it was written especially for the people in Belize. We didn't have to write the curriculum. They provided the curriculum to us. We had to read it, practice it, kind of organize it, get ready. I'm going to let a couple other people talk about VBS.
My name is Dean Niehoff. I'm a member here at Our Redeemer. The VBS it's already been mentioned, we had just 4 days of VBS. So we had, and our theme was basically that God is never far from us. God is always with us. There was 4 different lessons that we utilized, but as Ken said, we didn't have to write the curriculum for the VBS. It was provided to us by someone who was a Lutheran school teacher that was familiar with Belize and the society down there. So they wrote it in such a way that it would be as meaningful as possible to them with their understanding of society and of things in the world. The VBS basically started, as Ken pointed out, we did the VBS in Georgetown. And if you remember the earlier slide of that was a close-up of where we were in Belize, that we were on a peninsula. And we had to drive all the way to the top of that peninsula and then back down to get to Georgetown. We were almost at the same place, but it was across that little bay that was right there. But it was an hour and a half drive about to get from there each day, so maybe not quite that long, but 45 minutes. It seemed like an hour and a half because we were they have a thing in Belize that they want to keep the speed down as you drive through the area there. So we have speed humps here, where they have speed mountains. And and every time you saw one of those things coming, you better get your foot on the brake because you're going to have to get down to about 10 miles an hour to go over them without people hitting their heads on the ceiling. So that was an adventure by itself. But once we got there, the kids were amazing. Ken wrote an article for the newsletter that went out and talked about the fact that we had about 50 kids the first day, which was remarkable to me because, as we said, we went out on a prayer walk the day before and we didn't see very many people. Wherever we did, we stopped and had a prayer in front of the house and invited them and any of their friends or family to come. The next day, when we got there and saw 50 kids, we said, wow, where did they all come from? So that was great, but every day was a little bit more. And by the time we were finished, we were well over 100 kids that were attending, so that was fantastic. We did have to modify the curriculum, or at least Cindy and I had the youngest boys, and that meant they were basically preschool to maybe kindergarten, first grade level. And we had to modify the curriculum a little bit because it was really written for mainly a middle school, or not middle school, but a middle elementary education. So we ended up doing some things a little bit differently. We acted out each one of the stories so that they not only heard them, but could have a visual representation of what was going on. But we started out with basically the story for the day, went through that. We'd have a craft and then some snacks. Then we had a group session where everybody got together for songs and singing in the yard, which was great. And then we had served them lunch, and that was basically our VBS for each of the 4 days we were there. But we had an enjoyable time. We got to meet a lot of the parents, mainly the mothers of the kids that came in, and they would sit in on the class sometimes with us. The other thing that was strange to us was that we found that even though we had set up the VBS for certain age groups, you had no idea what age group you were going to have in your class, because brothers and sisters usually stayed together. So we just made accommodation for that. That was fine. So is there any questions at all about VBS? Yes.
What about the language? Do you have interpreters?
Well, the one thing we didn't mention is that Belize is the name of the country today. Previously, it was known as British Honduras. It was a British colony. And so the national language of the country is English. And all the schools are taught in English. They do speak other languages at home. When we were in Orange Walk, the prominent family language was Spanish. Here there's languages that are more of a Caribbean type background to them. But we had no problem at all with the language itself. The kids spoke English very well. The only problem I'd say we had with the language was trying to figure out what their names were, because they weren't what we would have as normal English-sounding names, and to try to write them down. Because one of the first things we did was we wrote name tags for each of the kids, and spelling them was somewhat of a chore, but we enjoyed that. I mean, we learned it was an opportunity to laugh with the kids about what was going on, so that was good. Any other?
I just wanted to go back and tell you what the theme again was from Matthew 8:38 and 39. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. All the stories emphasize that theme. And a couple of the craft items, as you saw on the slides, we did T-shirts. They had a tote bag with that pre-printed on there. They did a cross necklace, and also it's kind of neat. They came by some Polaroid film, and they had Polaroid cameras, took each one of the children's picture. There was one slide of Chris Noah taking pictures of a little girl, and each one, and then they used a CD or DVD frame, plastic case, as the picture frame, put the picture inside the little case, and let them decorate and put sticky things around the outside, God loves me, and so forth, with their name. It was kind of cute. The film was old, and the pictures didn't come out great, but of course the kids loved it. So then Dean was mentioning the songs and so forth. This is one. We don't have sound, do we, Rick? Okay. Cindy and Logan, we said we're not going to do this, but this is a song that Josh did at Sunday school. It's called the Hippo Song, or did at VBS. So if any of you have attended VBS, the Hippo Song, can you play the video again? Go back one. Can you go back one? There you go. I don't know if I remember this. Up so high and above all that, he put the sky. God's fingerprints are everywhere, just to show how much he cares. Who knows it? August, do you know that song? Come on up here. He knows it. Come on, somebody. Okay. How's this start?
All right. In the beginning, God made the seas and the forest filled with trees. God built the mountains up so high. Above it all, he placed the sky. God's fingerprints are everywhere, just to show how much he cares. But in the middle, he had lots of fun. He made a hill that weighs a ton.
anyway, the kids loved it down there. We should have had August down there. Okay. Then the next one, and unfortunately we don't have sound, but we had a huge speaker that we set up, and they had a lot of the VBS songs, and the kids were doing the hand motions to them, and that was real popular. It was warm. You see all the adults up under the cover there? That's because the what do you call it? The feels like temperature got up to 105 one day. It was pretty hot and humid. And the Kansas City group was great with leading all these songs too. They were a little bit younger for the most part. Mike, you want to follow up with the feeding program in those slides, please?
And just to reiterate, the Kansas City folks were in their late 20s, early 30s and stuff. Us old timers couldn't handle a lot of the outside when it was 100 degrees, so we put them outside to dance with the kids. So that made it nice. Back to the feeding program, what I told you earlier about making the sandwiches, we did, and then the morning of VBS, we took the sandwiches with us over, and one of the rooms in the bottom floor of the school that we were in, we used as our place, I guess, to put it together. And at the very beginning, when we first started this, we had different, I guess, items that we were asked to pick what we wanted to do. When we went to Orange Walk the first 4 years that Ken and Cindy and I, and when we went to, I didn't mind doing VBS, but this time I wanted to take a break. I just didn't want to do that. So I volunteered to do the feeding program. And so what we ended up doing is we took all the sandwiches and we put them in this room, and while the Vacation Bible School was going on, we had to actually put the meals together for the kids. And so what we ended up doing is we recruited a couple of the parents, mainly the mothers of the kids, and I asked them to help us. So while Vacation Bible School was going on, you can see what we ended up doing is we took the paper plates and we set them on a table. We took one of the sandwiches, put it on there, and Ken purchased a bunch of potato chips, so we took the potato chips with us, but because of the amount that we had to take, we had to be a little bit of, I don't want to say stingy sometimes, but we put 4 potato chips on. We bought cookies while we were down there, so we had a sandwich. We put 4 of the potato chips and 2 cookies. And we did that for every day, and you can see how we did. We put them together, and then we stacked them on. The first day, I think we made a mistake. What we did, well, we put the juice together, we gave them the juice, we gave them the paper plates, and that was a disaster because sometimes the kids would drop their meal or whatever. So we learned from that. So from then on, what we did is we had the teachers come down and say, I got 7 kids, I got 12 kids. So what we did, we gave the kids the drink, but we gave the teachers the meals and take it up to the classroom so we could kind of resolve that issue. But you can see what we did is we put all the meals together, and then when the VBS was over with, we brought all the kids down, they got in a line, teachers brought them in, gave them their drinks, we got them their meals, and then they went back to their classrooms, and then they had their meals with that. Now that's all we did with the feeding program. Do you want to go to the construction? That was another thing that I volunteered for. Chris, Noah, and I, we decided we were going to help out with the construction, and since this time, all they were going to do was put together a couple of the couple of benches. What happened is there was a guy down there named Clifton, and he had cut all the wood to make the benches. So while Vacation Bible School was going on, Chris and I would go out there, and you could see what we would do is we would try to put these together. The good part about it is Clifton had a good idea. He knew how to use a drill and screws, and so we had all this stuff put together. All we had to do was line it up and have him screw it in. But one of the days, we had the kids decide they were going to help because they wanted to do this too. So we took the screwdriver, the electric screwdriver, gave it to the kids and said, you start doing it. So the kids start putting the screws in the benches and stuff like that. So we had them help. So they had some ownership into this. And once we got done with making these benches, we actually picked them up and put them into one of the classrooms because that's what they were going to use for their feeding program so that they didn't have to go outside and eat on the outside or in the benches with the bugs and all that kind of stuff. So we put the benches in one of the classrooms.
And again, the picnic tables were left in Georgetown. That's going to be for their ongoing feeding program. Belize Mission Society is branching out. We're running a little short on time, but while Janet's coming up here to talk about, well, actually, we're going to, I'm sorry. We've got a couple, somebody who is going to talk about the children slides. The reason Georgetown was selected was because there's a lot of relatives for people that live in Signbite. Signbite was hit by a bad hurricane back in the 60s, and a lot of the relatives moved inland to Georgetown. And there are people called the Garifuna people. It's a cultural ethnic group that originated in Jamaica and some of the other Caribbean islands and settled in Signbite, Belize. But this hurricane drove a lot of them into Georgetown, so there's a lot of relatives, cousins, aunts, and uncles in both places. So that's why Georgetown was selected. Logan. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Right there.
The children. There was a lot of them. So, and they love to just cling on to you. Me, Brian, or Zach, they just all ran up to you and hugged you and just stayed by your side the whole time. They wanted to just be held, and yeah, they were a lot to deal with. And I had, during VBS, I had the youngest boys and everything, me and Ken, and you could have their attention span for about 5 minutes, but after that, it's ding, 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 ding. Like, it's all over the place. But they love just playing around with us. They might not have got the lesson that we were trying to teach all that much, but they got the experience. And I feel like that was a good thing because they just loved us being there. And they're always going to remember us and remember us by name. Sue said that every year they always ask us by name, like, when are they coming back? So I just find that just important and everything.
Dean, Brian? No? Okay. Just real quick, Dean already mentioned the speed bumps. Okay, they had the, on the way, this slowed us down. Mike's term for it is the silent policeman. They don't have a lot of policemen in Belize, but these are the silent policemen. I just want to throw those slides in there. Okay, now we have Bible studies.
All right, I am Janet Niehoff, and Cindy and I did the women's Bible study. We went prepared for women's Bible studies plus men's Bible study. But you know how that when you're told something that you really don't quite understand it until you actually work with it and see it. So if you could look at our Redeemer as the ones who were organized, we put everything together, we had all of our things together. Calvary was the ones who, because they were a bit younger, they had the vitality. They were able to they plugged the holes that we would have had working with these kids, such that we worked really well as a team together. So it's hard to describe. You've seen the Georgetown VBS pictures. We came back to do the women's and men's ministries back in Sanebite at Mercy House. And so we had been told, okay, plan for about 20 women, and maybe if you're lucky, you'll get 5 men. Well, 20 in our experience in Orange Walk area is that generally you'd plan for so much, but you'd get more than that. So we went prepared for 40 people, 40 women in the women's ministry. The first day we got there, right next door was a house, and there was some women playing a type of a bingo, but it looked a little bit fishy to me because it looked more like satanic type pictures in the bingo cards. But we stopped and we said, we're going to do Bible study in about 15 minutes, please come. Well, we got set up. We had planned the same type of lesson that we did back in Orange Walk 4 years ago, and I had my hand fans because we were going to do it on prayer. And so the 5-finger prayer, who to pray for. Then we had made up cards with prayers for different types of needs that they might have during the year. There were 20 different ones. And so Cindy and I waited around because we had been told that ladies had been told that we would be coming. Well, nobody showed up. And so we knew that they had these 5 women that were right next door. And Cindy said to me, she did say that sometimes we have to go to them. And I looked at her and I said, okay, let's pick up our stuff and we'll go to them. So we picked up our fans, we picked up colored pencils, and we took them over to them while they were working on a little table. So it was kind of difficult. The next day, we ended up kidnapping one of the aunts that was there and taking her back to Mercy House rather than doing it there. And then another younger gentleman came who had started talking with one of the other guys from Calvary. So we had about 2 or 3 there for that day, and we're sitting here with 40 things, and what are we going to do? So we continued to work. Well, the next day, women started showing up, and so we ended up having, not just with the women, but because there were so few men, we incorporated them into the prayer group because they needed that. So the 4th day, I asked, why these other ladies that had come the 3rd day, why didn't they come before that? And they said they didn't know. Well, Miss Sue said they knew. So they had to kind of get to know us. And so when I say that, you're told something that you have to really experience that was our experience, that we were told that possibly, that we would have to maybe go to them, that they would have to get a relationship with us, and which they did. And I think, when I think back, our fourth day, we had run out of things to do because we were to do 2 days. Cavalry was supposed to do 2 days. They were so good with the kids, we continued to do our Bible study. They took care of the kids, and we ended up doing the men's Bible study the fourth day to kind of supplement our things. One of probably the neatest thing that we did, Cindy and I, is at the end, Cindy said, well, let's go on a prayer walk. Let's ask the ladies if they want to go on a prayer walk in their village. And so we only had 2 younger women. And when we say young, they may be having their kids at 14 and 15. So the one young woman, I was thinking she was probably younger than 25, but she had 2 boys that were probably about the age of 9 or so. And so they were the only ones to take us up on a prayer walk. Well, when Ken was talking about living in groups, they really do live in clans, that the places that they were, we kind of went through a little hole, and believe it or not, the houses were kind of, all around, and people were coming and going, and thought, that was my first thought, okay, there really are living in clans. It was a whole different mindset than what you saw with the houses and land. We were all kind of used to that, but not there in Sanebite. So that was probably the biggest learning experience that we had, I think, together on that whole, the whole Bible study, and getting an understanding of what the Garifuna people were like, because the women would speak English while we were speaking English, and if somebody else came up to talk to them, they would be back in Garifuna, whether they wanted us to understand or not, or if that's their language that they feel most comfortable in. So it was kind of different from us, but since we're getting kind of short on time and I could talk for a lot longer, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to ask Cindy or I, because it was a different experience from the VBS and the Bible studies that we've had traditionally.
We did have a worship service. It was on Wednesday. They've gotten the habit of having their worship services, their regular worship services, outside underneath the church, because that's what they had to do when they were during COVID. The pastor came from Belmopan. His name is Micah Weidenauer, and conducted a worship service for us. It was primarily us and just a few others. I want to give you just a few examples of the housing. We're just going to kind of step through these every slide, 4 or 5 seconds. Again, in Georgetown, the houses were further apart. There was some land involved in that one also, but you can see how wet it is. Everything was really wet in Georgetown. There's water standing everywhere. There were- Yeah, yeah. There's right. There's an unfinished concrete blockhouse there, and just to the left of it, that is a house. In the Sanebite, the houses were a lot closer together. And again, this was real close to the church. There's what, 2, 3 houses there. Up, skip back a couple. There, okay. There's about 3 houses there. And the next one, that is the church property, and then across the street from the church. And again, those are houses, and the sanitation and There's no trash pickup. That's a pile of trash there. They typically burn their trash. And again, there's a couple houses there, and that might be that clan type, might be several relatives still living close together there. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up quickly. The last day, Friday, we had a chance to do a couple things different. We drove about 3 hours to the western part of Belize, right near Guatemala, and visited a nursing home. It was Octavia Waite Nursing Home. We spent 30, 40, 50 minutes there with the residents, talking to them. And singing, right? Okay. And then we had an opportunity to go to one of the Mayan ruins. Now I'm going to try to pronounce this. Shunatsowich. Otherwise, hard to pronounce, so everybody called it tuna fish. Okay. And in order to get there, this was kind of off the beaten path. We had to go and drive another 30, 40 minutes, go across a little river on a ferry. They made us get out of the van, drive the truck or the bus onto the ferry, and then we could walk down and get on the ferry. And the ferry was hand cranked across the river. It was totally manually. And then once we got across, we got off, got back on the vans and went to the Mayan ruins. It's several Mayan ruins areas in Belize and Central America. Okay. And several structures there, temples. If you've never been to Mayan ruins, they're all very similar though. And that's even up higher than Mike was. That's as high as it went, I believe. And you could see all the way into Guatemala. And then we were about 2.5 hours the same day, 2.5 hours back to Belize City in the rain. And we thank our very competent drivers for getting us there. Okay. Now, under would you believe it? This next slide is would you believe it? There's a Publix in Signbite. Only problem, they got a C on the end instead of an X, but they borrowed the logo and changed it, and there's a Publix. Then I want to say something about our accommodations. We've already said we're pretty nice compared to previous years. We were also very fortunate to be on that little skinny peninsula where just about everything was on the ocean. This was the complex we stayed in. Now, we didn't get to spend a whole lot of time there. We had about an hour a day before dinner to spend there, but this is our accommodations. And I'll leave you with one more picture. Three more pictures. Okay, that's about 6:30 in the morning at sunrise, just after sunrise, taken from just off of the deck. Beautiful accommodations. I want to do two things. I want to give you a chance to ask some questions, but we don't want to go too much longer. Marvin?
I have a question. You mentioned in the housing, sanitation. I don't imagine they have indoor plumbing.
Some of them had indoor plumbing, but it's not really a septic tank, but it's drains to something outside.
You said the school that were feeding 80. How many did the school have?
I don't know. Belize Mission Society is trying to support those people as best they can. They also do a scholarship program where if you have the aptitude and it's like a contract deal, they'll support you past the 8th grade, because 8th grade is where the government schools stop, or our 8th grade equivalent to us. And then if you want to go to high school or past, it's not paid for, and it's fairly costly. Most families can't afford it, but students with aptitude, they'll support if they'll keep their grades up and agree to, continue and do their best and whatever the contract reads. Okay. We can answer questions now or later. If we're done answering questions, I want to make sure we thank everybody that has supported the mission trips over the since 2016. It's amazing. The people that go typically pay their own way, but all the other things we do are from donations from here at the church. So got one more slide, but we'll hold that for just a second and close with a prayer. Okay. Gracious and merciful God, we give you thanks and praise for watching over us and guiding us on our recent mission trip to Belize. We trust your promise that when your word goes out, it will not return empty. Let the seed that was sown take root in the hearts of the children and adults in Signbite and Georgetown to produce a strong, living faith. Be with the LCMS missionaries and their families in Belize. Encourage them and bless their work. We give thanks for all who support the mission work in Belize and around the world. Let us continue to do your will to spread the gospel to all nations. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, along with those slides of the place where we stayed, I just wanted to put up one more slide and just let you know most of us that went are excited about going back. So we hope to do it again next year. I'll take any more questions, but other than that, we're...
Actually, so do you plan on using the Belize Mission Society again next year, maybe partnering up with, a younger crowd again?
Yeah, we've talked.
Is that what your current plan is, or?
Yeah, well, we've talked. The Kansas City group, we talked back and forth on our long drives here and there, and they're in agreement that we were a good 15-person team. Good match. We worked well together. They encouraged us. We encouraged them. It was exciting. The fellowship with other, Lutheran Christians was great. I think it was beneficial to me and to all the people that went. Everybody was excited about it.
One thing that we didn't hit too heavily on was that we did start each day with devotion, and we ended each day with a devotion. And each individual on the trip was responsible for either a morning or an evening devotion. And I think we really grew to know each other very well through those devotions, and it was really spiritual uplifting for us as well. It was just a wonderful time of sharing and caring for each other, and as well as caring for the people of Belize.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things I want to point out too, that it took me a long time to get my mind wrapped around. The lady who took us down there, Miss Sue, she was actually the one that founded the Belize Society. And she had gone down there and found the Sanebite area and found the poverty and wanted to started beating the drum and getting a totally, I guess, more Caribbean type of a beat to the old Father Abraham songs, the really, the old ones, and it was really kind of cool. But we found out we were the fourth VBS that had gone through Georgetown, and so all of us were kind of sitting there thinking, well, why are we doing this? Why is it the fourth one? And Miss Sue pointed out, she said, those groups come and they go. They may not come back the next year. And she said, what you need to do is get those relationships with the people and grow those relationships such that they come to know Jesus, come to know the people that are coming down that are acting as, Jesus with skin on. So to answer your question, Mr. Gresh, yes, I think that our experience, at least with the Belize Mission Society, having it through kind of LCMS, the program that Sue has talked about, Miss Sue's talked about, how it's grown over the years. Where we stayed, what was really cool is she said that God's hands is in everything that they've done, that a woman had gone down with her for one trip. She went back, this woman went back to her husband and told her all the things. You need to come down and see everything that she's doing. He came down, saw what they were doing there in the Sane Bight area, and because I called it Oreo cookie, only the bad part was in the center. And I don't want to say Sane Bight was bad, but they were in the center. You had these, what would you say, multi-million-dollar homes that Americans coming down, yeah, the HGTV things coming down, living in Belize on the ground. Then you had, Placentia was the tourist area where you had condos and things. Well, he came down, those condos that we stayed in, they were bought by this gentleman because he was so impressed